Have been plenty of rumors going around about the Lorax 2, and if you've clicked on this video, you probably already know people are getting genuinely excited because whispers about new characters, new storylines, and a possible return of the Lorax himself are picking up again. And honestly, this is the perfect moment for that hype, especially because Dr. Seuss movies have suddenly started dominating the streaming charts. So let's dive into everything we know so far about the possibility of the Lorax 2 and why the chances of a sequel feel more real today than they have in years. Dr. Seuss, whose real name was Theodore Seuss Geisel, has always had a massive impact on children's entertainment. His books shaped generations mainly because they introduced colorful worlds, memorable characters, and simple messages delivered in the most whimsical, imaginative ways. Classics like Horton Hears a Who from 1954, The Cat in the Hat from 1957, Green Eggs and Ham from 1960, Fox and Socks from 1965, and plenty more continue to pull in huge audiences across age groups, even though decades have passed. His stories are so unique that Hollywood has revisited them again and again. Over time, several Dr. Seuss books have been adapted into movies. Some, like the 2003 Cat in the Hat live-action film starring Mike Myers, were big, flashy productions. But many others, like the 2008 animated Horton Hears a Who, found success by sticking closer to the playful tone of the original books. That movie featured a star-studded cast including Jim Carrey, Steve Carell, Carol Burnett, Will Arnett, and Seth Rogen. Beyond the film, Dr. Seuss stories have inspired musicals like Seussical, which blend several Seuss worlds together on stage. So the idea of revisiting one of his stories for a new sequel actually fits perfectly into the long tradition of expanding his universe. Recently, something interesting happened that put the Lorax back in the spotlight. Two Grinch films, one from 2000 starring Jim Carrey and another animated one from 2018 starring Benedict Cumberbatch, suddenly shot back up on the Peacock streaming charts. And they weren't alone. The Lorax joined them, landing on the same top 10 movies chart. This happened the week of December 20, with The Grinch 2018 reaching number 1, How the Grinch Stole Christmas 2000 taking number 2, and The Lorax settling in at number 10. This chart domination wasn't random. Both Grinch movies always return to popularity during the holiday season because people love revisiting that Christmas storyline. But the Lorax climbing the chart had a more unusual reason since it has nothing to do with Christmas. It had resurfaced in the news because of a real-life story involving a suspect who had listed the Lorax as one of his favorite movies online. Even though the situation itself was grim, the sudden spike in curiosity around the film brought it back into the mainstream conversation. But here's the part that matters most. Whenever older movies unexpectedly surge in popularity on streaming platforms, studios take notice. And this is usually when sequel conversations start heating up again. That's why fans who have been wanting the Lorax 2 for more than a decade now suddenly have a reason to be optimistic. Studios want to invest in titles that show long-lasting interest, and the Lorax just proved it still has that power even though it was released in 2012. There's also an insider rumor going around that the potential storyline for the Lorax 2 could take place several years after the events of the first movie. In this rumored version, Ted Wiggins is no longer a 12-year-old kid. Instead, he's a young adult who helped transform Thneedville from a fake artificial city into a place where nature has returned in full bloom. Trees are growing again, animals are thriving, and it looks like a perfect world at first glance. But things start to shift because people begin taking nature for granted again. It's a very realistic angle, especially knowing how the first movie's themes focused heavily on environmental responsibility. The Once-ler, voiced by Ed Helms in the first movie, would still be living in seclusion in this rumored storyline, but whispers about new industrial threats would start resurfacing, which could force him to confront his past all over again. This direction makes sense, because the first film left some big unanswered questions, like whether the Once-ler ever fully redeemed himself, how the world changed after the seed was planted, and whether new threats would eventually undo Ted's progress. Those loose ends make a sequel not just possible, but actually meaningful. To understand why a sequel would be exciting, it's worth revisiting how the first movie came to be. The idea was originally pushed by Dr. Seuss's widow, Aubrey Geisel, who had a strong partnership with producer Chris Meledandri, the founder of Illumination and the creative mind behind massive hits like the Despicable Me franchise. Audrey suggested adapting the Lorax when Illumination launched, and the film was officially announced in 2009. By 2010, Danny DeVito had been cast as the voice of the Lorax, and the animation team at Illumination, MacGuff, began production in France. The finished film premiered at Universal Studios Hollywood in February 2012 before releasing wide in March. Although it received mixed reviews from critics, audiences connected with it because of its message, humor, and visuals. It became a commercial success, earning $351 million worldwide on a $70 million budget. Financially speaking, that kind of success usually opens the door for a sequel, but it didn't happen back then. The biggest reason was that Illumination turned its focus to the rapidly growing Despicable Me universe, which became their main priority for the next decade. But streaming changes everything. When a movie from more than 10 years ago suddenly jumps into the top 10, studios reconsider possibilities that they put aside before. And since Dr. Seuss adaptations are rising across multiple platforms right now, the trend looks even more promising for the Lorax 2. The first movie also set up future possibilities in its story. Ted Wiggins lived in a city where everything was artificial: plastic trees, bottled air, and no awareness of the world outside its walls. When he started learning the truth from the Once-ler, he discovered what led to the destruction of the Truffula forest. The Once-ler's rise and fall was a cautionary tale about greed, pollution, overproduction, and the importance of sustainable choices. By the end, Ted took the last Truffula seed back to Thneedville, stood up against O'Hare, and helped expose the reality outside the city's walls. And then, the movie ended. We never saw how Ted handled the responsibility of reintroducing real nature. We never found out if the forest fully returned or if society learned anything long-term. We never discovered whether new industries rose up again, this time under better leadership. And we definitely didn't see what happened between Ted, Audrey, the Once-ler, and the Lorax after that final moment. Those plot gaps are exactly the kinds of things a sequel could explore. And if Illumination is already hearing the buzz from fans and seeing the streaming numbers to back it up, they'll know interest is very real. Overall, the timing finally feels right for the Lorax 2. Dr. Seuss movies are trending again, fans are actively discussing story possibilities online, and studios love reviving nostalgic titles that still perform well. And since the first film left open space for a meaningful continuation, not just repeating the same message but expanding it, the sequel could easily dive deeper into how a community rebuilds its relationship with nature. So even though nothing is officially confirmed yet, the combination of streaming success, fan excitement, and renewed attention makes the Lorax 2 feel closer than it's ever been. And if these rumors are true, the next chapter could give us a richer, more grown-up look at Ted's world, the forest's future, and the Lorax returning with a message the world probably needs now more than ever. And that's that for today's video. Thanks for watching, and we will see you in the next one.